Okay, here we are again. So let's try another problem. Okay, let's take a look. All right, so here's another problem here. Okay, so let's take a look what it says. So if A is a constant, for what values of A does the line whose equation is x plus y equals A times in parentheses x minus y have a positive slope, right? So I would say to figure out, if you're trying to figure out what the slope is, it would be nice to have it in the form y equals mx plus b, right? So I'm going to try to do some manipulation with this equation here, right? So let's just write it out, right? So we have x plus y equals, now I'm just going to distribute the a, right, across the parentheses, right? So I'll get ax minus ay, right? So now, if you're trying to get y equals mx plus b, you want to try to get the y onto one side. I'm going to try to get the y onto the left side, and I guess I'll try to get the x's over to the right side, right? So let me do a little manipulation with this equation here. So first I'll do minus x on both sides, minus x, and I'm going to try to get the y over to the left side. So I'll do plus ay on both sides, right? So plus ay, okay. So then the x's cancel out over here. So we get y plus, y plus ay equals, and then we have ax minus x, right? And then these here cancel out, right? So now, all right, so I'm trying to get the y. So why don't I try to factor out this y here, right? So the y goes into both of these things, and I'm just going to write it as y, and then parentheses, you know what, I'll write it, I'm going to put the a first, right? A, right? Y into ay is just a, right? And then y into y is 1. So a plus 1. And over here, I'll factor out the x, right? So we'll have x, right? X into ax would just be a. And then x into x is just x into negative x would be negative 1, right? So I'm trying to get into that format with the y equals mx plus b. So I want to get that y isolated on the left side. So what I'll do is I have this a plus 1 part here. So I'll just divide that, that a plus 1 in parentheses. I'll divide that on both sides, that expression on both sides. So a plus 1 divided on both sides, right? So now here, okay, so then these cancel out, and then I kind of have sort of that format, right? So I have, well, it is that format, right? So I have y equals, and the m value will just be this a minus 1 over a plus 1, right? So I'm just going to write that as an expression, a minus 1, a minus 1, parentheses, times a plus, divided by a plus 1, right? And that multiplied times x, right? So we have, and there's no constant, right? There's no b part, right? So what I can do is I can just look at the choices and see what would give me the answer that I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get a positive slope. Well, right off the bat, I could see if I plugged in a equals 1, right? If I plugged in a equals 1 into that, well, that would be 1 minus 1, that's 0. So that's definitely, that's not going to give you a positive slope. That's going to give you 0. So that one would not work, right? And the next one is saying a does not equal negative 1. Well, A does not equal -1, but it could still, you could still plug in 1, right? If it's A is not equal to -1, you could still use 1. And if that were the case, then it wouldn't work, right? So this one wouldn't work either, right? Then we can say that A is somewhere in between -1 and A. So let's say I tried 0, right? So let's see if I tried 0. So that would be 0 minus 1 over 0 plus 1. And then, well, I'm getting a negative slope, right? So this one doesn't work, right? But then this last choice here, so A is, it's outside, it's less than -1, or A is greater than 1, right? So let's say if I tried a number, let's say I tried a number less than -1, let's say -2, right? So I have -2, right? Plugging it into this slope, this M value here, this A minus 1 over A plus 1. So -2 minus 1 over -2 plus 1, right? So that winds up being -3 over -1, which is +3. So there you go, you have a positive slope. So now let me just see if I used a value greater than 1, right? So let me, you know what, I'll just erase this here. And let's say greater than 1. So let's say greater than 1. Let's say I try 2, right? So, okay, so 2 minus 1, right? Over 2 plus 1. And I wind up getting 1 over 3. And that's positive. So I guess, I mean, if we've already eliminated all these, so we know that, and I just tried a couple of choices here and we see it works. So I have to say that the answer would have to be D, right? So the answer is D, right? It's outside the range, outside of, as well, it's A is less than -1 or A is greater than 1, okay? And we have done another problem. Good.